boys, girls, and fellow intellectuals. This is Reason, that voice in your head you should listen to. And today, I'm debunking AnCom's video. Anarcho-capitalism versus anarcho-communism. One is a contradiction. Now that that's out of the way, sit back and enjoy.
Are you ready to have your mind broken and shat on by this article?
Pretty sure nothing can shatter my mind, but go ahead, give it a try.
Thomas Forjak, take it away. Anarcho-capitalism or anarcho-communism. One is a contradiction. That's correct, but let's move on.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure you don't understand whose favor that statement swings in.
Anarchists often put themselves into one of two categories, anarcho-capitalist or anarcho-communist. Without going into a long discussion on capitalism versus communism, I would like to explain why anarchism is compatible with only one of these concepts. You are right, Thomas, there. You are right that it is only compatible with one of them. But let's see which one you think it is. Let's start with the most basic definitions.
If you know anything, it's that basic does not give you a full understanding of what something is. For example, let's start with capitalism. Capitalism, noun, an economic and political system in which a country's trade and industry are controlled by private owners rather than by the state.
Capitalism requires private ownership over the means of production, in brackets, capital. Communism requires public ownership thereof. While anarchism anarcho means there's no central authority that holds a monopoly on the enforcing the law, true, nor requires people to follow legislation under threat of force.
Now, what we actually have today is called regulatory capitalism, not actual capitalism. Why do I say this? Because government regulates the market and business practices, as well as it keeps a corporation from going under instead of letting it go under due to the will of the free market. Now, AnCom, you fudged the meaning of anarchism a bit, didn't you? Or is that the article? But either way, I'll explain it as you do not have the actual definition. Anarchism, noun, belief in the abolition of government and the organization of society on a voluntary cooperative basis without recourse to force or compulsion.
Again, true. Violence may exist in an anarchic society because some people will always have sociopathic behaviors. But in general, people don't resort to violence because of its costs, risks, and repercussions. If not for the immorality of it, they prefer peaceful interactions. They do not want to commit acts of violence and aggression, but many people don't want others to commit violence against them.
Well, it may be that people are just not a bunch of narcissistic assholes who will get violent just to get what they want. I'm not saying this isn't applicably true. I'm just putting that out there.
They would seek mechanisms, tools, and solutions to protect themselves and prevent others from committing acts of violence.
So like body armor or an M16. Yeah, I can see that. In fact, still people do that today in spite of there being law enforcement.
Again, that is fair enough. So far, everything seems fine and dandy.
Well, except for that butchering of the definition of anarchism, yes, I would agree.
But let's keep reading. Providers of such protection services would emerge on the unhampered market and seek profit from providing them. They would pool their resources and their customers and find ways to lower their costs to attract more customers and make their service more affordable for virtually everyone. For those who would like to object that this is unfair because literally everyone already has such protection for free, i.e. paid by taxes, no we don't. We pay for real protection by paying a premium on our housing, because cops don't want to go to shitty neighborhoods. Goodwill and competition on a free market would provide affordable, reliable, and just protection. What the fuck? No, it won't.
Actually, AnCom, it would, and here's how. If Company A is offering to protect my property with 2 guards for $1,000 a month, but Company B is offering 5 guards for $700 a month, then Company A will either have to increase the quality of their service or drop their prices. It's a pretty easy concept to grasp.
Honestly, you putting your trust in something that's so volatile, the free market is not a good idea in this case. It really isn't. If you put things like security on the free market, how long will it take before someone gets a monopoly over it? The biggest company will just buy out its competition, or if they don't want to comply, use violence. They can. There's no laws preventing them from doing so, so why don't they just do that?
See, what I'm about to explain is going to be pretty simple to understand. If you want to create a monopoly under a capitalist society, it cannot exist, as nothing can keep someone from creating a competing business. And if someone attempts to use force to stop you from creating said business, you have the right to use self-defense against them. As well as someone attempting to use force to create a monopoly is also at the mercy of the free market, which means people will not want to be associated with them or buy their services. In other words, they're screwed financially and will have to hide because of what they've done in order to make sure someone does not find them and kill them.
Seriously, have you even considered what you're actually advocating, Thomas Forjak? I'm serious here. This is going a bit crazy. Let's keep going. Protection doesn't only include one's body, however. People want their property to be protected as well, and this includes entrepreneurs and their capital, their land, machinery, material, etc. In a free market, there will be no difference in services provided to individuals and to companies. A free market would provide protection of the means of production, and there is no freer market than an anarchist society. The only way to prevent businesses from protecting their capital is for a central authority to monopolize violence and protect, in quotes, people and property selectively against their expressed wishes. No, you're forgetting something here. The state enforces your private property rights. If you got rid of the state, you'd require private security firms to do this protection over your property, and they would use violence against people who try and infringe on these property rights. Okay, so if we look at this, right, the one thing that's protecting your private property rights is the legal sanctions enforced by the state.
Believe it or not, people actually do hire private security because the police cannot or will not protect a private individual's property. That's why they hire private security firms, because what you're paying them to protect is their main concern.
If you get rid of the state, that happens. So what happens next then? So you have to use more force to protect your private property from the working class, who kind of hate you for oppressing them in this way.
Wait, are you saying that I'm oppressing the working class because I'm not giving them my stuff? Okay then, let's put this in terms that anyone can understand.
What's mine is mine.
It's kind of a thing, right? So, you don't really seem to know what the fuck anarchism is, do you? You don't seem to know what the roots of anarchism are. Because the roots of anarchism are working class struggles. They are the working class who wants to get rid of the hierarchical institutions which are oppressing them. But you seem to forget this. Instead, you believe that anarchism is simply the absence of a state and no more. What you forget is that the biggest companies become states if there's no state. How? Well, if you got rid of the state and the monopoly of violence it has over the specific area, there's going to be some other institution which will establish a monopoly over the use of violence over these areas which a power vacuum has been left behind. So,
no, I'm pretty sure they're still companies, but they would own land. See, a state is a nation or territory considered as an organized political community under one government.
So, for example, if Walmart, for example, starts, because it's the biggest company and it buys out Target and it buys out, I don't know, the supermarkets over here, Tesco, Morrison, Sainsbury's, etc., then it can get a monopoly over supermarkets, and once it's got a monopoly, it can raise its prices because no one's going to buy from anywhere else.
Wait, I don't understand. If it's a monopoly, how could someone buy from somewhere else? You're not making very much sense. Also, I already explained how a monopoly would be impossible, so this is still void of logic.
And it can make more profit through that. So, if you're going to say that they want to provide the best service possible, that's bullshit. Companies will only provide the best service possible if it happens to be more profitable, which it usually isn't.
Actually, in a free market, it would be more profitable to make your product more efficient and cost-effective than your competitors. Or the consumer will buy your competition's product and you lose out on the money they would have spent on your product if it was better than your competition's.
So instead, you'll see things like Trump University, which was an absolute scam. There was nothing there whatsoever. It wasn't even a university. The idea that these rich people need to be protected and they are great, they create the jobs and all that, is bollocks. The ones who create the jobs are the working class. If there are more people in an area, then there'll need to be more jobs. If there wasn't, those capitalists wouldn't create those jobs per se.
What? That makes no sense. If the working class creates jobs and are still the working class, then your argument falls apart. Because that would mean employers are oppressing themselves to create jobs for the rest of the working class to make money. The fact of the matter is that a job is created because there's a need for labor that can be filled by an employee. Employers that have a business that only needs 20 employees will not create 500 jobs because that is not a necessity and it is not cost effective to the employer. Do you not see the fallacy in your argument?
So, let's keep going and fucking cringe. So-called anarcho-communists sometimes also require the abolition of money. That's true. This notion ignores the emergent nature of money. People have sought universally accepted media of exchange for millennia because it lowers transaction costs. A butcher no longer needs to exchange meat for bread with a baker, but can accept something he knows can exchange with a knife maker. Money is a naturally emergent phenomenon, and thus again, the only way to abolish it is to call for violent central authority to enforce its ban. This is bollocks. Why is it bollocks, you wonder? Because the idea that anarchists want to use force to get rid of money is nothing but a straw man argument. It's trotted out a lot against us, and how we actually want to get rid of money is very fucking simple. Let me just sit you down and I'll tell you how we want to get rid of money. We want to get rid of money by removing the need for money. So this could either be through free access or labour vouchers, and these are both systems which remove the need for money.
Technically, money is a labor voucher, as it is proof of aiding your fellow man, as well as a claim on goods or gold. The history varies, but you get the point. It would still be a form of currency.
Labour vouchers are not money, and people think they are, but they're not, because labour vouchers cannot be traded. Instead, they are used up once you exchange for something, basically.
Exchange, You mean a transaction?
So, this will prevent a hierarchy developing with people with more money having more control over society. This is a way that we prevent that. But anyway, let's keep going and fucking cringe even more.
The only cringy thing I've heard this entire video is you and your ideas.
It's a cognitive dissonance to call for a society without central authority and at the same time without protection of private property, including means of production, and without money. Anarcho-communism is a contradiction in terms. Fucking what? Really? You think this? Okay, let's establish a few more things then. Private property in communist terms is the means of production, basically. So it's basically factories, farms, offices, etc. This does not make the distinction which communists make with personal property. Personal property being stuff you use for leisure, stuff, your house, your computer, your phone, your whatever, your dick if you like, I don't know.
The difference is private property is ownership by a non-governmental entity. Property being land, items, machinery, etc. Personal property meaning ownership by a single person of land, items, machinery, and etc. Either way, taking either of these from someone who's purchased or owns them is theft. You can put it in communist terms, but unless you're purchasing what it is you're trying to get, it is still theft of property.
It's basically anything used to ledger stuff not used for the means of production. That's what it is. So, personal property is not taken into account here. This guy's probably going to use a straw man that they could just run into your house and you'd have nothing he could do about it. This is bollocks and you should know it. Anyway, let's look at some of the other things, shall we? It is a cognitive dissonance to call for a society without central authority and at the same time without protection of private property, including means of production, and without money. Money is inherently hierarchical, and if you leave money intact, eventually it'll go in its very unequal way, and some people will be richer than others, and the people who are richer than others will have more power than others, and if people have more power than others, then you have a hierarchy, and therefore that'll lead to a state eventually.
As my friend Hoodie Demon put it,
See, let me bring you up to speed on something I don't believe you're aware of, my friend. Human beings are born at different capacities. Some people are just, nothing wrong with them, just the way they're born. Some people are dumber than others. Muhammad Ali, no competition, no disputing. He was by far the greatest boxer who has ever lived. But the dude had an IQ of 78, and 70 is borderline retarded. But I digress. See, he was an example of someone who can become successful while working with what they have. Everybody can find their niche. Just like some people are born dumber than others, other people are born average, some people are born gifted at certain things, some are even prodigies. So, if someone lives in a communist society and they are prodigy and they have some sort of gifted intellect and they are very, very good at what they do, and they should, under normal circumstances, be much more successful than everybody else because they're living up to their full potential. If they have the shackles of the state keeping them on the same level as everybody else, that's not freedom, my friend.
Yeah, that summed it up. But just to make sure it sinks in, here's another quote from him that should make sure you fully grasp it. If we're both slaves in a concentration camp, and we're free to walk around while we're not being out to work, we're both equal and cannot take each other's freedom. But we're not free, are we?
So if you want to get rid of the state, you've got to remember to get rid of the preconditions, which lead to the rise of a new state. For example, these include hierarchy. So basically any system where people are ranked one above another in terms of authority and domination submission, these systems need to be abolished, because if you leave them intact, eventually they will lead to the birth of a new monopoly over the use of violence as a state. So
Citations are very much needed because what you have said seems to be mostly opinions.
I'm just going to say this, that anarcho-communism is not a contradiction in terms because it has actually worked in practice in the past. Anarchist Catalonia, Rojava, Free Territory of Ukraine, etc., Zapizda movement or whatever it was called, the Oaxaca Commune. I can just go on about this.
I looked at the history of said countries and they didn't last long enough to see the long-term effects of communism on a society. So you can't really call them a success. The Oaxaca Commune was not even a country, so you can't even count it because that didn't last too long either. And anarcho-communism still requires an arbiter to decide who gets distributed what, so it still requires a form of governing. So yes, it is still in term a contradiction.
But anarcho-capitalism has, as far as I know, only worked once, and there's something very synonymous with it. Neo-feudalism.
Being synonymous with does not make it the same as being the exact same thing, and that is still under a form of governance.
I ain't even kidding, the one time which anarcho-capitalism was, I'll say, completed, it was actually established, was the Free State of Congo. So this Congo Free State was actually a very oppressive dictatorship, which was actually owned by one person. So this was a giant hunk of private property owned by Leopold, which was the King of Belgium, but I want to establish this is not a monarchy because it was actually bought by Leopold. It wasn't conquered by Leopold like many people think it was.
Now I think you just don't understand the difference between capitalism and government.
So this idea of private property being this just a haven for good things to happen is a bunch of shit, and instead will lead to the deaths of over half your fucking population. So this is his blogger on anarcho-capitalism versus anarcho-communism. Thomas Forjak, you are wrong. Here I've said why you're wrong. And let's stop believing in broken ideas that never lead to fucking anything.
I agree. Let's not believe in anarcho-communism, shall we? Well, that's the end of the video. If you enjoyed, like and comment. If you're new, subscribe. And if you want to stay in touch with me, my social media accounts are linked below, as well as my Patreon. Now remember, stay reasonable. And to you, AnCom, I encourage you to do your homework on your opponents, as maybe you'll realize like they have, that you're wrong.